5 nuclear warnings that could have ended in disaster. What would you do if you woke up tomorrow morning knowing that a nuclear bomb could fall on your country? Unfortunately, in some countries, this is a reality, and it is because the great powers of the world that have access to this technology use it to terrify their enemies when they feel threatened, making the difference between a threat and the death of millions of people remain in a giant red button in the hands of a nervous operator. Welcome back to The Most Bizarre. In this video, I'm going to tell you about some of the most chilling nuclear warnings in history. If you're not subscribed yet, don't forget to do so for more bizarre videos. But enough talking, let's dive into it. Number 5. The day the moon was mistaken for a Soviet attack. Let's be honest, you have to have some serious eyesight problems to mistake the moon for a full-scale Soviet missile launch. However, when you're in a time of war, no precaution is too much, even if you need to smash the moon to pieces because you think it might be under attack. On October 5, 1960, the U.S. Nuclear Command Center, NORAD, received signals on its early warning radar at Thule, Greenland, indicating that a full-scale nuclear attack on the U.S. was in progress with 99.9% certainty. If you were the guy in the cockpit and you were told that there was that much chance of your country being blown to bits, you would do everything in your power to stop it, which is why the risk of bombing was so imminent. The radar built in Greenland was precisely constructed to prevent any kind of attack against the United States and to launch a massive nuclear response to intercept the enemy before it was too late. Fortunately, the warning reports were followed by a sigh of relief when it was discovered that it was a false alarm. The incident is frightening, and it is not the first time that this large and complex warning system has given rise to other unpleasant surprises. If this situation had been handled by an inexperienced team, a panicked neighboring nation could end up being bombed by accident. And that is why no one should have access to this technology, because you never know who will be behind the command line. Number 4. A communication error almost ended in a nuclear bombing. If you have a radio problem, the last thing you would think of doing would be to nuke your radio station. Or maybe you would, and you need to go to therapy. However, things for members of Strategic Air Command HQ may be a little different, as loss of communication can become a life or death situation, so no measure is too extreme. Even if this team of experts did not plan to blow up any radio stations, the situation that took place on November 24, 1961 came close to blowing something up. After the cartel general lost contact with the North American Aerospace Defense Command, NORAD, and multiple ballistic missile early warning system sites, panic nearly took hold in the military. Because the lines of communication were designed to be completely independent of each other, the lack of communication between other bases simultaneously was interpreted as a highly unlikely consequence or a coordinated attack, leading headquarters to prepare its full force to be deployed. Fortunately, a group of planes flying over the area confirmed that there did not appear to be an attack, bringing relief to the army. The cause of the incident was apparently the failure of a single repeater station in Colorado, a failure so simple that could have ended in a gigantic nuclear bombing of a nation had the military not kept their composure. Number 3. The Northwest Blackout of 1965. On November 9, 1965, the longest and most extensive blackout in the history of North America took place, leaving the northwestern United States and part of Canada in darkness. The event spread terror across 128,000 square kilometers of territory, leading many people to spend the night in darkness, including 1 million people who were trapped in elevators, suburban transportation, and electronic trains. The lack of traffic lights led many people to abandon their vehicles in the middle of the street, causing a scene that looked like something out of a post-apocalyptic movie. But what began as a civilian catastrophe could have ended up becoming a military catastrophe, because while people were panicking, the Office of Emergency Planning Command Center was preparing to launch a nuclear attack. After the blackout occurred, nuclear bomb detectors used to distinguish between regular power outages and outages caused by a nuclear explosion placed at strategic points in the United States suffered a series of failures and errors in their circuitry that led the military to fall under the illusion that they were under nuclear attack. Number 2. The missile crisis. There is one threat of nuclear attack that cannot be overlooked from our list, and that is the Cuban Missile Crisis. The Cuban Missile Crisis was a conflict between the United States, the Soviet Union, and Cuba that took place during the Cold War, and it nearly ended in a major bloodbath, because the world was very close to facing a nuclear war. After the United States discovered that Cuba had a base armed with Soviet nuclear missiles aimed at its territory, alerts sounded throughout the country. The Cold War was characterized by the indirect confrontation between the United States and the Soviet Union, arming other nations to fight for their interests. With the United States financing capitalist governments and the Soviet government financing communist leaders, since a direct confrontation between these two nations could end the planet. And that is why the missile crisis is so chilling. Because without anyone being aware of it, humanity was on the verge of disappearing from the face of the earth. Number 1. The Russian nuclear threat. It is curious that every time there's a threat of a nuclear bombing, either the United States or Russia is involved. But since they are two of the most powerful countries in the world, we should not be surprised. The reason why the nuclear threat from Russia deserves the top spot on this list is because it could become a reality in the next few months and start World War III. If you have been watching the news, you are probably aware of the conflict between Russia and the Ukraine after Russia decided to invade the Ukraine territory to prevent the Ukraine from joining NATO, the alliance of the most powerful nations led by the USA. Although on this channel we are against war and any attack that has been committed against unarmed civilian groups, but the truth is that the Russian invasion does make sense from a military point of view for Russia, because if the Ukraine had joined NATO, the United States could have recreated the missile crisis that took place in Cuba, putting the Russian president in check. The Ukraine is a very strategic territory that could facilitate the landing of US troops and even be used for the construction of future military bases. This is not a conflict about gas as the media were making it seem. It is a conflict with much more real causes, even if they are morally questionable. And it is precisely for that reason that it is such a terrifying war. Because both Russia and the United States have the power and the desire to annihilate each other, and the invasion of the Ukraine has not exactly been helpful in strengthening their ties. With Putin's recent statements that he is planning a nuclear strike in response to NATO should any of the member countries send troops to help the Ukraine, the capture of the Chernobyl nuclear power plant, which we have undoubtedly all heard about, and the attacks on active Ukrainian nuclear power plants, it is safe to say that the potential for nuclear war is just around the corner. Let's hope things get better, because otherwise, we're all screwed. And that's it. If you liked this video, be sure to subscribe to see another one of our amazing videos, and turn on the notification bell so you'll be kept up to date with all the latest news. Thanks for watching, and I'll see you soon.